key thing to understand with university business collaboration is that there's a level of responsibility and that has very significant consequences. If you're focused on one thing and somebody asks you about something totally different, you have got to follow through because you're building trust, you're building a relationship, and you're building the reputation of your academic institution.
Hello and welcome to the Strategic Partnerships podcast series. My name is Balzhano Razbaeva, Manager Strategic Initiatives at UIIN, and I'm your host for today. UIIN is going to Ireland. In this episode, we chat with Finola Howe, Head of Enterprise and Engagement at Atlantic Technological University, our co-host for the upcoming UIIN Ireland Forum on September 11th. Finola shares insights into the forum's key themes and explores how university-industry collaborations drive regional economic development and innovation in Ireland. Tune in and discover why this event is a must attend. Today, we will delve into the main themes of the upcoming UIIN Ireland Forum, which we're very proud of hosting together with ATU. And the topic that we will be exploring as part of that is bridging boundaries for effective external engagement. And our guest speaker today and local host, Finola Howe, Head of Enterprise and Engagement at Atlantic Technological University, will provide us with an in-depth look at the strategies and insights that will be explored as part of the forum. In today's conversation, Finola will highlight the importance of external collaborations and partnerships and the impact these have through the engagement. Thank you so much, Finola, for joining me today. I'm very excited to learn more about Ireland's innovation ecosystem and to also learn a little bit more about the upcoming event. Maybe just to start off, could you please share a bit about your background and your role as the Head of Enterprise and Engagement at Atlantic Technological University?
Sure. So I'm going to try and condense my background of 30 years into a few key points. But for myself, I'm a mechanical engineer by background. So I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering, and I've worked in industry for, I would say, the majority of my career. I worked in multinational Hewlett-Packard for almost 18 years, worked my way through being an engineer, being an engineering manager and executive levels, both in Ireland, in the Caribbean and in the USA. And I had a range of roles as quality engineer, product engineering manager, was a manufacturing site director in the Caribbean, in Puerto Rico. And I then branched out and realizing that I had a lot of experience in manufacturing. I wanted to do something slightly different, which was understanding corporate strategy. So I moved to California and branched out into environmental sustainability, chemical compliance, and typically driving a lot of strategy and change. And I'll talk a little bit about this later, but throughout that whole experience in HP, I would have worked an awful lot with universities at different stages for different things. When I left HP, I moved back to Ireland and I'd always wanted to set up my own consultancy. So I did my own consultancy, Downey Consulting, for about 6 years, where I brought all that experience to the SMEs, small to medium-sized businesses, dealing with strategy, engineering, supply chain development, all of those kind of things that small businesses tend to struggle with. And through that time, I did some consultancy with third level academic institutions. I suppose that was my segue into academia. In 2018, I joined, as it was at the time, IT Sligo, which was Institute of Technology Sligo. And I was leading out a team that was called a Technology Gateway, and they were funded by Enterprise Ireland. It was really a team that was focused on providing research and consultancy to SMEs in the areas of precision engineering and manufacturing. And so I got to work an awful lot with businesses from that side of things. I also then moved on to a slightly different role within the university, leading an industry cluster. Ireland's economic policy has grown and developed quite significantly over years, and we've realised the need for industry clustering to create broader impact within our regions. So I led within the Northwest, we're in the border region with the north of Ireland. So I started up the border region manufacturing cluster. And that was a really interesting process of engaging with industry, from the ground up, trying to help them understand what industry clustering was. And then 2.5 years ago, I became the head of enterprise and engagement for ATU. So ATU is a new university. We merged from three former institutes of technology. And we'll talk a little bit about this later. This is quite common in Ireland at the moment, where institutes of technology have merged to become technological universities. So we are the merge of three different institutes that were ranging from the northwest of the country down to the west. So we have 9 campuses spread over 4 different counties. And from our northernmost campus to our southernmost campus, it's about 300 kilometres. So it's a big range. It's quite a broad, and it's one of the now the biggest universities in Ireland. So we're working through a lot of organisational and structural changes. We're just over 2 years into the merge. My role is very varied as head of enterprise and external engagement. I have covered technology transfer, research commercialization, entrepreneurship programs. We have 4 innovation centres in ATU. I lead out on one of them. I'm very focused also on industry engagement, regional engagement, and we're very embedded into our regional enterprise plans. So I personally have had to develop my knowledge base quite significantly over the years. So CPD has been a very critical enabler for me. So that's a summary of your question there.
Thank you so much, Finola. You certainly bring 360 degrees view of university business collaboration in Irish context. So it's great to have this opportunity to learn from you. So maybe we can also touch upon some of the hot topics today that are on the agenda for the Irish context when it comes to university industry engagement. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about whether you observe any trends. We already talked about the emerging institutions. So maybe you can just share your perspectives on what is really interesting today.
Yeah, so I suppose if I look at it from, you mentioned there about John, that I have the 2 different aspects of it coming from industry and then from an academic. So some of the learnings I've had from being on both sides of that is that when you're on the industry side of things, I noticed that industry folks do have a fear of engaging with academia. There's this feeling of maybe I'm inadequate. Maybe I don't know as much about the subject matter as the university folks would be. Maybe I'm lacking in technical depth. And there is a difference in terms of timeframes. I also learned when I was working internally within the university, going externally to industry, is that I might be going as a university person out to industry, and I might be very focused on precision engineering and manufacturing. But one of the key learnings is you are a face to industry. It doesn't matter what your focus is. When you go out to industry, you are the door in, and they can ask you about anything. I think a key thing to understand with university business collaboration is that there's a level of responsibility when you are industry facing, and that has very significant consequences. If you go out and you're focused on one thing and somebody asks you about something totally different, you have got to follow through on those other requests as well, because you're building trust, you're building a relationship, and you're building the reputation of your academic institution. So it's really important. So I learned that there's this language translation that needs to happen between, to use UIIN terminology, you've got to be a boundary spanner. You've got to really understand both sides of it, and you've got to translate the different things that are going on and try and come to some sort of a alignment. In terms of what's hot in Irish context, obviously, as I mentioned, the whole 3rd level sector is changing, and we've merged all the regional institutes of technology to become technological universities. That brings a whole load of change internally, structural, cultural, while still trying to deliver on your obligations to students, industry, and the region. So there's a challenge with that. There's a huge challenge with that. Change is hard to process for people. On an internal basis, it's very hard to really understand the impact that has. But there are huge opportunities in the new technological university sector, because we bring much greater opportunities and supports to the regions. For example, in ATU, we're the only university that covers the west and northwest of our island. So that means students can get a quality education within the region. Companies have a greater talent pool within the region, and we can attract more national and international academic talent to work in our university within the region, because it was a very attractive quality of life. I suppose the other thing that comes to mind in an Irish context that's hot topic is the Irish governmental policy has become really focused on economic development. That rolls out through structured regional enterprise plans, and universities are embedded in those enterprise plans. And there's a high expectation for us to contribute to our regions in very impactful ways. The other hot topic is, I mentioned, around industry clustering. It's very high on the government agenda around policy making. Ireland is very behind the curve in industry clustering, and so we're not garnering impact from the potential benefit of industry clusters. And universities in our current setup have been funded to host cluster managers within the university structures. So that is another key thing where you're seeing the university's been pulled into economic development and enterprise development constantly. Another key thing from the government focus on economic development is around the importance of business creation, entrepreneurial mindset development. So there are a lot of startup supports embedded within our system, which is fantastic, but there's more of an impetus on universities to embed entrepreneurial mindset, education and development into the academic programs. So that's been really critical. And also the idea of trying to create impact from research and commercializing research is really becoming more critical, and the supportive growth of SMEs. So there's some of the key things that are going on in an Irish context.
Thank you so much, Finola. There's a lot going on indeed. So I'm wondering, what are some of the current challenges, or how would you even begin to prioritize them?
Yeah, there's a lot going on there, and that's all outside of the university environment. And when you bring that into the university environment, you have a crux, and it's a very basic crux in that typically our academic institutions have been teaching institutions. And the focus on research and engagement with industry, having staff doing like research collaboration, has been the lower priority. I think that the more mainstream universities always would have had research as a focus, and they would have had staff built in and focused on that. In the technological universities, they were primarily, the culture is a teaching culture. So you're trying to change that whole mindset. Academic staff involvement in university business collaboration can be difficult in that environment, because you've got this culture of teaching versus being involved in external engagement. But I suppose that is a crux, because all their hours are built up with, I've got to teach. I suppose some of the solutions, though, to that, what we've seen more and more of is a lot of it's the old saying of what gets measured gets done. And what we see is a lot of the funding mechanisms of the funding that we go after, the key performance indicators are driven around industry engagement, entrepreneurial development, maybe supporting female-led businesses, startups, patents, license agreements, spin-outs. So what we're starting to see now is more of a drive from the funding mechanisms to expect us to do all those things that are driven by industry engagement. So that has required us to look internally at our structures and our resources to enable that delivery. And we have to do things differently, and we have to structure ourselves differently. And our academics need to be enabled to split their time differently. If we look back at how best to do that, we do need to prepare and motivate our academic staff to want to do this. I suppose if you go back to basics, some level of training. How do we train our staff to figure out how to engage? Because as I mentioned earlier, there's this translation that needs to happen. And if you're an academic that has grown up in this academic environment and you've never engaged with industry before, how are you supposed to know how to do this well? So I think going back to basics and training our staff on how to engage with industry is really critical, and also how to develop systems to support them on how to navigate this. And I think at a sectoral level within the universities, and the technological universities, there has been some conversation on academic contracts, which typically would have been focused around teaching. How do we maybe look at some of those contracts to enable research and engagement and allow for time for them to focus on building relationships with industry?
It's very good to hear that those conversations are taking place, because indeed I couldn't agree more. Academics shouldn't be forced, they should be supported and encouraged to collaborate. And how you can do it, I also completely agree with the fact that they just need to be provided with the opportunities to learn how to do so, and incentives and career progression is of course another different topic that is extremely critical in this area. So thank you for that. I'm wondering if you would like to share any of the successful examples that you observe in the Irish context these days. Maybe some of the institutions, ATU included, are already pioneering this area by offering interesting interventions in that space.
Yeah, so I think at a very macro level within the Irish context, we are very well served by state mechanisms that enable university business collaboration. So three come to mind. I have touched on them before. So we have Enterprise Ireland funded New Frontiers Entrepreneur Development Programme. And that is a really well served programme that brings entrepreneurs through very basic stages. Then there's a 6-month phase 2 program, and there's a phase 3 program. So that is a program that's funded through Enterprise Ireland. A second program is the Technology Gateway program, and that is where, again, there's a Enterprise Ireland fund, a program manager that has a specific technology focus. Again, it's hosted within a university. So I was involved in precision engineering and manufacturing. There are several others throughout the country. And then there's also the third program I'd talk about is the Industry Cluster Development Program. So those three programs, the commonality between them is that they all are programs that have program managers funded by Enterprise Ireland, but are hosted within the universities. They provide supports for stages of business development through ideation, through product service development, business planning, development, growth. And they're done in concert with the universities. They're on campuses, and they provide links between the businesses and the relevant university expertise. So that's at a macro level. If I look at an ATU example of that, it's a really nice example where last year we had students from our ATU undergraduate and graduate programs who wanted to develop an idea that they came up with and they worked on in their final year of their academic program. So they came to me and said, I have this idea, what should we do with it? Not sure. And so we put them through, we suggested that they apply for our New Frontiers Entrepreneur Development Program. So they applied, they were selected, and they participated in our New Frontiers Entrepreneur Development Program. This is a 6-month program. It's funded. They are funded, and they get excellent training, excellent development, excellent mentoring through 6 months to develop their idea out. All the while, they have office space, and they're incubated in one of our ATU innovation centres where they have access to other businesses that are startups. So they're in an ecosystem, and they can learn from each other, and they can learn from some of the businesses that are there. They also can avail of, and they did avail of, funding through Enterprise Ireland to work with our technology gateways to help develop their prototype. So that was just a wonderful ecosystem development. And all the while that we were able to connect them with our industry clusters where they can create new networks, new collaborations, new contacts. And so that's an example of a student who can work through all of those support systems. And because those state-funded support systems are built in through the university, it's a really nice example of pulling and joining all the dots together. Now, that you might ask what enabled that. And I would say that a key enabler is having those funding systems and processes available through the programs. So Enterprise Ireland, as I say, fantastic supports. Having those funding opportunities available was critical. Having those programs embedded within the university was also critical. And then having an engagement team that can help them navigate all those things that are available to them is really important as well. And I suppose when you say it all out, it sounds so wonderful and it sounds so easy and it sounds, gosh, this all works like clockwork. But in reality, it's very complicated and complex to manage all of those. The different parts are all moving. And we're still not there in terms of making it as efficient and as effective as we would like. But I just think we've got a really fantastic springboard with having those programs available and embedded within the universities.
Yes, I was about to say that having this navigation support system in place is absolutely critical. And it sounds to me that you are really taking this sort of human-centered approach by really focusing on the needs and providing all-round support for a student team that just has an idea and would like to explore how this idea can manifest in the future. Beautiful example. Thank you so much. Also, I think it also illustrates indeed how all of the support system come together,
Yeah.
coming from outside and inside of the
Yeah.
university.
As I say, it sounds easy, but it's still a work in process in terms of developing and making it streamlined.
Absolutely. And it sounds to me also that the forum is very timely in this regard, because this is where I hope the colleagues can discuss together what can be done and how this very complex system can be navigated.
Yeah.
So maybe we can also briefly touch upon that, and you can tell us a little bit more about UIIN Ireland Forum that we're extremely proud to co-host together.
Yeah, perfect. So we're very excited to co-host with you as well. It's something that's been on our mind for some time. So I suppose in terms of the Ireland Forum, I was engaged about for the past 3 to 4 years with the UIIN. I've noticed in that period of time that there's a growing involvement from an all-island perspective in Ireland, not just in the Republic. And I suppose I did my first training and my first conference about 3 to 4 years ago. And there was only a handful of people from Ireland or across the island at those trainings and that very first conference I was at. But over the past few years, I've noticed there's more and more people from Ireland becoming more involved in industry university engagement. And what we noticed, I would say maybe at last year's conference, I noticed, wow, there's a lot of people across the island of Ireland here. And we tended to gravitate towards each other, as you will have noticed at the conference. But what we actually noticed was we were learning about each other. We didn't know who each other were. We didn't know what different universities were doing. And so we created an informal network of sorts. And we've realized that we have a lot going on in an Irish context. Many of us in the technological university sector are operating in similar environments, early stages of development, and the Irish Forum really gives us an opportunity to delve deeper into the relevant topics for us in an Irish context, spend that day really unpicking some of the things, talking about some of the things that we're struggling with, and also sharing, learning, and connecting with each other, and learning from some of the more established universities that have been doing university business collaboration for a lot longer than we have. So that's really the premise, is that this is an opportunity for us to maybe formalize our connection and our network a little bit more. But even today, when the message was going out about this forum, I had a lot of people from the Irish context that I would have met over the years at the conferences saying, oh, this is great. So there's a network creating. So it's like the coalition of the willing are coming together.
That's so beautifully said. And I think it's indeed is a great opportunity for peer learning, because the environment might be diverse, but the challenges are often the same and similar. So why don't we get together and co-create solutions together?
Yeah.
Maybe on that, we can also touch upon some of the key themes and topics that will be addressed at the forum, Finola.
Yeah. So the key theme is around bridging boundaries for effective external engagement. So the topics that we're going to be touching on are the development journey from a technological university perspective. We're also going to have a focus around the creative sector. So a lot of us in Ireland in the university sector, we focus very much on technology, engineering, science when we're speaking and talking about industry engagement. But I would say all of our universities have some sort of creative or social sciences or humanities or something like that may not be thought of in this environment as much. So we are going to have a section around the creative sector, how best to do it in that environment. And we're also going to have some perspectives from our key stakeholders. So Enterprise Ireland, I've mentioned lots of times, and we really want to get their perspective of industry university engagement and how that pans out in terms of regional economic development. Their focus in Enterprise Ireland is the development of Indigenous Irish companies. So from startups upwards into SMEs. So it's really important that we partner with them so that we'll be getting their perspective. And we also hope to have a panel discussion with senior leaders from academia and industry. And our own ATU president, Dr. Orla Flynn, will be on that panel. And we're still building out some of the other speaker and panel slots as well. So it's going to be an exciting opportunity for us. I think the event is really for anyone interested in how to create impact from industry university collaboration in an Irish and all island context. So it's for educators, researchers, industry professionals, policymakers. Come along. It's going to be a great day.
Wonderful. We can't wait to come, and we're very much looking forward to engaging with our Irish community, and hopefully whoever is joining us today will be able to attend as well. So that would be very exciting. And thank you so much, Finola, for hosting us and for also making this happen together with us. So we can't wait, really.
Our pleasure.
Thank you so much, everyone. Hopefully we'll see you soon in September in Ireland. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Baljan. Take care. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's discussion. Follow UIIN on LinkedIn, and if you are enjoying our podcast, make sure to subscribe, rate and review in your podcast platform of choice to help other people find this content too.